Hi everybody. Welcome to 81 books that I read in 2024. I'm going to be doing 3 different types of videos like this, like sit down videos where I talk about books, because normally I don't do like book recommendations, I just do like reviews and stuff. This one is going to be the first of 3. This one is the 81 books that I read in 2024, and then I'm going to do a book tag video, so like my favorite book of 2024, my most disappointing book of 2024, all those types of questions. And then I'm going to do my top 24 books of 2024. And those are going to come out within the span of January. One of my resolutions that I have for this year is to read 85 books on my Goodreads right now. That is my goal for 2025. My goal for 2024 was 50, and I read 81. Another resolution that I have is I want to post at least 3 videos a month, which I am going to be in school and I am going to be getting a job when I go back to school, but I think I can do it. And that is my goal. I'm going to push myself because I love reading and I want to do this for a living. Not this exactly, but I want to be reading for a living. So anyway, we're going to get into the books that I read each month. I'm going to give like a 2 to 3 sentence summary. I'm going to give my rating of the book. And I'm also going to include my December wrap up in this video. I'm going to go more in depth when I get into December of the books that I read. But if you've watched some of my other videos, like my other wrap-up videos, then you'll hear some of the books that I've read before. But because I started my YouTube channel in March, there's gonna be a couple books that no one's heard me talk about before, which is exciting. So let's get into it, shall we? I have my Goodreads pulled up right here because, like I said, I use my phone to record. We're gonna have to do this the old-fashioned way. It is not the old-fashioned way. Okay. The first book that I read in 2024, I read in January, and that is The Road by Cormac McCarthy. This is considered a modern classic. I rated it 3 stars, and it's about this father and son that have lived through this apocalyptic type event of the world. Like, everyone got sick, and I think there was like, I don't know if it was zombies, but I know there was a sickness, and so there's barely any people left, and this father and son didn't get sick. It's very depressing and very sad. The vibe that I got reading this book was just dread, and I'm like, oh my god, our world, we're gonna die. We're all gonna die. We're gonna live through this apocalyptic thing, and then we're all gonna get eaten by zombies. So it was not good for my mental state, but I understand why it's a classic. Like, I get the vibe, but personally, it was not for me. I like reading about post-apocalyptic times, but like more the Hunger Games, more like Divergent. I think because there's like a romance in it, and then we have like, we can root for something like a changed world. But this was just like sad because the dad wanted to kill himself the entire time, but the only reason he didn't was because of his son, and that he was trying to live for his son, which like I get. I couldn't. So I gave this 3 stars. Y'all literally should see what my floor looks like right now because I'm trying to find all the books that I have and I have to like look and then pick it up. Okay, the next book I read was The Storied Life of A.J. Thickery. I gave this book 4 stars. It's a character study about this grumpy old man, and he owns this bookstore. Something happens to him one day, and then his life is changed forever, and then he blossoms into a nice human being, and we get why he's a grumpy old man and everything he went through to make him grumpy. This one was a very popular book. I think it was like last year was on like a Goodreads award. Oh, now it's a major motion picture. Well, now I have to watch the movie. It was good. I enjoyed this story. I did cry. I remember that, but I haven't really thought about it since I read it, but I would recommend this book if you like the kind of just character study of just following this guy along and just seeing what he does and why he makes decisions he makes. 4 stars. The next book I read was Rebecca, and please do not mind this my copy of this book. I got it off of Thrift Books, and I paid like $4 for this book, but it's got like the stamp that I tried to peel off, and then all of these other things I tried to peel that off. She's been through it, but this is an old copy. Rebecca is a classic. It's a modern day classic. Another one.
Thank you.
I listened to this book because I knew I could not sit down and read it. It's basically about this woman. She marries this man called Mr. De Winter, Maximus De Winter. She's like this lady in training, sort of, and they meet, and then they end up getting married. And then when she moves back, this woman, she moves back to his house, and it's called Manderley. It's this big mansion in the countryside. And then she finds out that he was married before to this woman named Rebecca. She had mysteriously died, like, I think 4 or 5 years previously. And so we kind of figure out what happened, how she died, and how, like, her ghost kind of haunts the new Mrs. De Winter. I gave this book 3 stars. Something, I don't know what it is, but classics, they always have this certain plot line at the very end of the book, and it's foul. It's a foul plot line, and I'm not going to tell you what it is because it's a spoiler, but if you know, it has something to do with the late Rebecca. That's all I'm going to say. This book, it's a classic. Like, it's not a bad classic at all. Like, it was actually entertaining. I was entertained. But I watched the movie after this because Miss, what's her name? She was in Mamma Mia, the new Mamma Mia. She was Cinderella. I don't know what her name is. But she was Rebecca, and I think she killed that. She's just so English, and I love it. 3 stars for Rebecca. I would recommend it to read if you want to read classics. The next book I read was Powerless by Lauren Roberts. I gave this book 4 stars. Probably more like 4.5 stars now that I think about it. Essentially, we have our main character. Her name's Peyton Gray. She lives in this society of elites. So if you've read The Red Queen, kind of the same vibe as that series. Peyton is an ordinary, so she doesn't have powers. There's the elites and the ordinaries. Peyton is an ordinary. And then she gets caught up in this competition because she saves someone. She has to pretend to be an elite because all of the ordinaries are being killed. And so if someone finds out that she's an ordinary, she's gonna die. There's just something about a fantasy novel with a lowly female main character who's strong-willed that has to fight in this competition, and then she ends up in this enemies to lovers relationship with someone in power. It just does it for me every time. Every single time it does it for me. So I gave this one 4.5 stars. And the 3rd one comes out this year. I'm so excited, and I'm about to eat it up. Oh my god, the mail people are here. Did they bring a package for me? Oh, they got a package for me. I already know what it is. It's gonna be my Kindle case. Please. Yes. Next book that I read, The House of Sky and Breath by Miss Sarah J. Maas. This was my 2nd time reading this book because it came out, I think I was a senior in high school when this book came out. There's 800 pages in this book. This is the 2nd book in the Crescent City series. The Crescent City series is about this girl named Bryce, and it's kind of like this magical world, but it's like modern. Like they have phones and stuff, but there's also angels and demons walking around in the street, and it's kind of that vibe. And so Bryce, she works at this art dealer thing. She's half fae, so she's like kind of magical, but not really. She just got the pointy ears and that's it. And then her best friend Donica ends up passing away. She gets killed because she's like kind of like a police officer, but like not really a police officer. Like, I don't know what it's called. Like a bounty hunter, sort of. But she ends up getting killed, and then her pack gets killed as well because Donica's a werewolf. It's kind of Bryce having to live her life after her best friend passes and how she, like, just declines. And then she meets this guy whose name is Hunt Athalar, and he may or may not have wings, and this is the 2nd book. So much happens in this book towards the very end, and let me tell you, I'm gonna get into the 3rd one because I read the 3rd one like 2 books after this, but I gave this book 5 stars. It was 5 stars, okay? And I know people have mixed opinions about this series because they're like, oh, it's too info dumpy. Oh, it's too info dumpy. Okay, if it's info dumpy, reread it. Just reread it. It's okay. Like, that's the thing with fantasy books. If you want to get into fantasy books, especially high fantasy books, literally take your time. It's okay if you read it and you don't understand what's going on, just keep reading, and then you can reread it, like, later on in life, and then you're like, oh, okay, this is what they're talking about. House of Sky and Breath, rated at 5 stars. Next book I read was Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. I love Ali Hazelwood, and I'm not a big romance reader. I don't read a whole lot of just strictly romance books, but this one, oh my god, I read it so long ago. So it's about these 2 physicians. There's 2 different types of physics. It's like physical physics and like theoretical physics. She does theoretical physics and he does physical physics. And there's like this big rivalry in the STEM world about how like the physical physicians are like, theoretical physics is not real, da 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 da. But these 2 are basically like competing. I think her mentor is like retiring or something. And his, like, department is getting, like, shut down. And then she needs money to keep it going because, like, she believes in it or whatever. And then this man comes into play because I think he's trying to shut it down. I think that's what happens. But it's a STEM romance. And honestly, it doesn't really matter what the plot is because the romance ate. It ate. Unfortunately, it ate. And if you've read The Love Hypothesis, which I have, you get a little peek of that couple in here. I gave this one 4 stars. I would highly recommend this book. The next book I read is called The Obsession. Okay, this book freaked me out, actually. Can we talk about this? This book literally threw me for a loop because I listened to the audiobook of this one. And I remember being at Starbucks at 5 in the morning making sweet cream foam. And I'm just like listening to them talk about it. I was freaked out. It was like, okay, so it's about this guy and he like falls in love with this girl and then he starts like stalking her. But the way it's told, it's like, we do not know who to trust. Like the way the narrator is so unreliable. It's actually insane. Okay, let me just read the back to you so you know what I'm talking about. Logan thinks he and Delilah are meant to be. Delilah doesn't know who Logan is. Logan believes no one knows Delilah like he does. He makes sure of it by learning everything he can, watching her through a hidden camera. Some might call him a stalker. Logan prefers to be called romantic. Delilah is keeping secrets though, deadly ones. There's so much more to her than meets the eye. Logan is determined to make Delilah the heroine in his twisted fantasy, and he'll do anything to get what he wants. Delilah is done with the men in her life controlling her. If Logan won't let her go, she'll make him. Yeah, T, I don't want to give anything away, but yeah, Delilah's going through some stuff at home, and then Logan tries to come and save the day, even though Delilah doesn't even know Logan exists, and it's freaky deaky. Okay, it was a good thriller though. I don't think it's YA, but I actually really enjoyed this book, and I don't really like YA books, but I gave this one 4 stars. Next one, I read The One by John Mars. Hold on, I have to remember what this is about. Oh my god, this one was so tea. This one was tea. Okay, so it's about this woman, and she makes this like dating app where you send in some of your DNA and then it matches you with your soulmate. Yeah, right? We get like 7 different point of views, and it's actually so good. We get like the woman who created it. We get this woman in like Australia. We get this woman in Scotland. We get this woman in America. And it's like all of these people. Oh my god, there's one dude who literally is about to get married to his fiance and then does the little match thing, because a lot of people are like against it. They don't want to know if they're like with someone right now, and they don't want to know for sure, because like what if the person that they're with is not the person they're meant to be with, you know? It's going to cause some issues. There's people that are like about to get married and the partner wants them to do the test, and so they do the test and then they find out that they're which is so tea. There's people that are like faking who they actually are, and so they're like talking and stuff, and then they're like completely different people than who they say they are. There's the CEO who has not done it, or I think she did it, and I think it just took hers like a really long time to come in, her like results to come in. Hers, like the guy that she's matched with, oh my god, that storyline is actually insane. Okay, I completely forgot I read this book. I'm re-ranking this book. I'm giving this book a 5 stars. For the last like bit of each person's storyline, I was folding shirts at Dick's Sporting Goods listening to this story, and I was like, oh my god, I'm tweaking right now. I'm tweaking, y'all. What the hell? The One by John Mars, 5 stars. Please read that book. It's so good. So I read this book like 2 books ago before I forgot to talk about it. The House of Flame and Shadow by Miss Sarah J. Maas. Like, girl, are you kidding me? This book was like $25, which I understand. But, like, please look at this cover art. Like, look at that. That is so sick. It's so cool. I gave this one 4 stars. Because, like I said earlier, when I talked about the other Crescent City book, there is a lot of info dumping, especially in this book. And there was a plot point in the second one that I thought they were going to carry over into this third one, but they did it horribly. Killed it. They messed it up so bad. And I was so disappointed, and the entire Sarah J. Maas community was also disappointed. I speak for the masses when I say this, okay? Would I still recommend this book? Yes, because Sarah J. Maas is my queen, and I will do anything for that woman. I literally have a tattoo of one of her series on my arms. So, like, look at this book. Like, it's literally like a Bible, bro. Like, I feel like I'm reading like a holy text when I read this book. But let me tell you, the day it came out, I called out of work so I could go buy it and read it. And I got like 200 pages in. There's 835 pages in this one. Okay, I'm just really proud of myself because this is a big ass book and I read this whole thing. I gave this one 4 stars. I think I'm gonna say, I'm actually gonna give it a 3.75 stars. Now that I think about it, I still recommend it, but it disappointed me immensely. Okay, the next book I read is called Mary Jane by Jessica Anya Blau. It's kind of another character study. You're just following this character along. Her name's Mary Jane. She's like 15 years old. She goes and babysits for this family. It's like the 70s, the summertime in like the 70s. She comes from a very like religious, strict household where like they don't talk about how they feel. They just kind of go about their day, and everyone's supposed to be nice and kind to each other and do what they're supposed to do. They don't talk about anything. But she goes and babysits for this girl, and their parents are literally insane. There's like a rock star that comes and lives in their house for like a couple weeks, and this actress also that they're like married or whatever, and he's got like a drug problem, and they're trying to help him like work through it. It's actually crazy, but it was so fun to read it. I would recommend reading this book like in the summertime. I rated it 5 stars. I don't know if I would rate it 5 stars now. I think I'm gonna rate it 4 stars. Because like I haven't really thought about it since I read it, and it kind of dragged certain areas did. But it was such a fun read, and I would recommend reading this on the beach. Like this on the beach in July. That would make this like a peak reading experience. So 4 stars for this one. The next book I read is If He Had Been With Me by Laura Nolan. Now, the unfortunate thing about this book is it's supposed to be like one of the saddest books of all time. I didn't think so. It was sad. It's like about these like why are we making children go through these traumatic things and writing books about them? Actually, can we talk about that? Because it's literally about these high school students. It follows them from like middle school, how they used to like hang out all the time, and then they got in high school and kind of stopped talking. Even though the girl had a crush on the guy or whatever. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know if I like the fact that they're just so young going through these things. Because it was very sad. Like the ending was very sad. But it's like their friendship, they just follow their friendship and then something tragic happens. And then there's a second book. Will not be reading the second book, unfortunately. I gave that book, I gave it 4 stars. See, I'm reading these ratings that I gave these books, and now I'm reevaluating my decision. I'm second guessing myself. I'm probably gonna rate it 3.75. I think that's my new rating that I'm gonna give it. Hold on to your hats for this next one that I read. I say that as if half the people that watch this like are really in tune with like the book community. If you are, cool. If not, you have no idea what I'm talking about. I read Fourth Wing this year. And it's not the sprayed edges kind. That's sick, actually. The sprayed edges is like black and it has little dragons on it. Fourth Wing. Let's get into it, shall we? If you have not heard about this book, that's okay. I'm about to tell you what it's about. It's about this dragon riding academy. Right. Cool. And so we have our girl, Miss Violet, okay? Violet, she's just so small and so tiny, and she's like the youngest of her family, and she just gets thrown into, I think. I read this book and I was like, okay, I understand the hype, but I don't think it deserves this much hype. Unpopular opinion. But I did enjoy it. So she just gets thrown into this dragon riding academy, and then she finds out the different like family rivalries that are going on, and like how people are discriminatory towards like certain people because of their family, because there was this uprising in the past or something that happened. And so the children of the people who were killed in the uprising are at this dragon academy. So there's like the power dynamics and like the treatment of other people. Also, Xaden's overrated. Sorry, he's an my bad, y'all. It still was entertaining though, and I am gonna read the second and the third books. I gave this book 4 stars though. Haha. Next book that I read, Sometimes I Lie by Miss Alice Feeney. This cover scratches something in my brain, and I absolutely love it. I gave this book 5 stars. I don't even remember what it's about. I need to reread this book because I just read the back of it and I vaguely remember reading this book. That is so unfortunate for me. I'm embarrassed to be a reader, actually, at this point. This woman wakes up in a coma. She can't move or anything, and then she can't remember what's going on. It's a psychological thriller. I think I'm going to give it 4 stars because I remember loving it when I read it, and I think the ending got me. Don't remember the ending. So like I said, I'm going to have to reread it. The back says, Amber doesn't remember what happened to her, but she has a sneaking suspicion her husband had something to do with it, or her sister, or maybe both. Terrified and trapped inside her own body, she slowly begins to remember a night that changed her life. Is she in a coma due to an accident? Is her sister having an affair with her husband? What happened at work with her horrible boss? And who is the person who's silently visiting her bedside each night? 4 stars. I would recommend it, even though I don't remember everything that happened in it. I'm trying to do like speed round now, y'all, because I've been talking for a lot. We're already at 24 minutes. Do Not Disturb by A.R. Torre. This book, fun fact, I got it in Key West, Florida. The author would go into this bookstore that I bought it from because she's from Key West. And I was like, oh, that's so tea. This is the second book in the Girl in 6E series. Essentially, she's a cam girl, and then she gets caught up in, like, one of her clients are, like, crazy, and then she has to go interject herself because she has to save someone who's in danger. And then the second one, also, she's a recluse. That's something else. She does not leave her apartment. She does not go out at all because she has this, like, desire to, like, kill people. It's crazy. She has to venture out of her apartment to go save someone. That's not what this book's about, but that's what the first one's about. The second one is her trying to cope with being able to be around civilization and, like, see if she can make herself normal. I actually love this series, even though it's kind of very adult. If you were 16 years old, maybe ask your parents before you read this book. But I really enjoyed it, and I gave this book 4 stars. Next book I read is a reread, and that is Magnolia Parks. Look at the cover, look how pretty it is. In the back. Magnolia Parks by Miss Jessica Hastings. Magnolia Parks is about these super rich, wealthy people in the UK. Think Gossip Girl, but in the UK. I read this book, I think 2 years ago, and I was like, this is so stupid. Literally, what is going on? It follows Magnolia and BJ Valentine, her love interest. Essentially, BJ cheated on Magnolia at like some point, and they keep getting like almost back together, and then they keep like, someone keeps doing something to someone else, and then they break up, and then they almost get back together again, and everyone knows BJ and Magnolia are meant to get together, but they have like torn up their friendships. There's so much drama. If you like drama, read this book. If you like reality TV shows, read this book. If you like Gossip Girl, read this book. And her outfits, she does this thing where she'll guess people's outfits. She'll say, okay, that's 1974 Chanel something line with Fenty, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. And she'll do that for everyone's outfits, which I think is so awesome. I reread the first book, and I gave it 4 stars. Next book I read is 5 Total Strangers by Natalie D. Richards. This is about this girl trying to come home for Christmas. I would recommend reading this around the Christmas time also. I think I read it April 13th. Yeah, I wish I'd read this during the Christmas time. But she's coming home for Christmas from school, and she's snowed in. This girl is snowed in at the airports, and she ends up getting a ride with these 4 complete strangers. And so much happens. And so many people try to kill each other, and they get lost in the snow. If you want a nice little thriller, I would recommend this book. I gave it 3 stars. Next book I read, I'm Glad My Mom Died by Geneva Curdy. That's all I have to say about this book. I listened to the audiobook of this while I was doing inventory for Dick's Sporting Goods. Let me explain to you what inventory is. You go in at 8 p.m., you go around the store and you scan all of the items, you submit them, and that's it. You have to scan every single item in the store and then write the count. And then someone has to go behind you and scan and make sure that you did everything right. This is from 8 p.m. at night to like 4 in the morning. I was listening to this book. Holy moly. Jennette McCurdy's mom is crazy, and she is so incredibly strong. And just like watching iCarly growing up and watching Sam and Cat growing up, and then you hear all the stuff that's going on behind the scenes, especially when the documentary came out with What's-His-Face being a creep. That crazy. So I would recommend this book if you want to get into memoirs and you're too scared or you're like hesitant. I would recommend this one because it's just so much drama and like so like insane, and I'm like, how does that actually happen? 5 stars. The next book I read was The Bell Jar by Miss Sylvia Plath. Shout out Miss Sylvia Plath. I'm so sorry that you stuck your head in an oven, but girl, I get it. I understand. This is a story about this college-age girl in like the 30s, I think. She was going to this college. She's so smart and so driven, but it's just like kind of her just descent into madness, and how like her life, especially like back in the 30s and the 40s, how women were either just like supposed to go to college to get a typing degree and then go type in an office or become a secretary, or they were supposed to just go become mothers while the men are off. You know what I'm saying? Like, she didn't want that, and she tried to conform and tried to do it. It just didn't work out well for her. This book is very like dense, so I would recommend listening to it. Aww. The Amazon package that I talked about, there was an email that popped up. Anyway, there was an email that popped up because my mom bought it for me for Christmas. And she said, I love you. That was very sweet. Sorry. If you want to know how this book kind of sounds, let me just read a little quote for you from the back. I felt very still and very empty, the way the eye of a tornado must feel, moving dully along in the middle of a surrounding hullabaloo. Girl, what's a hullabaloo? Don't know. I give this book 4 stars. So, if you want to get into classics, another good one, ow, my leg. Another good one I would recommend. Next book. I forgot to grab it. The next book I read, The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I'm not shut up about this book since I read it, okay? 5 stars. This book is 5 stars. I think it's probably my top 3 books of the year. So this book is, there's this guy, his name is Richard, and he goes to this college, and he's studying Greek at this college, like Greek theology type thing. And then there's this little group of friends. There's Bunny, there's Francis, there is Henry, there's the twins. I don't remember their names. They have this little clique, and it's kind of like a weird, like, culty vibe thing, and it's very dense also. The story that they tell, the atmosphere that is created in the story was so cool, and the ending was so weird, and I, like, loved it. If you've read the book Bunny by Mona Award, that book feels like an acid trip, and there's a part in this book that feels kind of like that whole book. But these people are just so smart, and it's like stupid how smart they are. So I would recommend this book. It's kind of dense, like I said, so maybe listening to it. There's an audiobook on YouTube by Donna Tartt, is her like reading it, and she does the voices so well. So I would recommend listening to that one. I love this book. I love this book, and I will not shut up about this book. So I gave this book 5 stars. The next book I read was another reread. Whoop, 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 whoop. I reread Beach Read by Emily Henry. So the unfortunate thing is that when I read this book the first time, I gave it 5 stars. But then I reread it this year and I gave it 3. Because, like, certain parts of it, I just felt like were so... You know what? Actually, let me tell you what the book's about. It's about these 2 writers. The girl writer, she moves into her dad's old, like, beach house because he was, like, cheating on her mom, apparently, like, all through her childhood. And she has to cope with him passing away and finding out, like, that he was cheating on her and the woman that he was cheating on her with. And so she goes to this beach house in this beach town. And her neighbor is Mr. Gus over here, who's also a writer, but he's like her arch nemesis, and they like move in next to each other. And then they end up switching stories. So like she has to write a story like he writes, and then he has to write a story like she writes. It's good. I would recommend it if you're trying to get into reading. It's a good romance book. I just think because I read it already, and I like already have an issue with romance books just in general. Rereading it was probably not the best, and I didn't absolutely love it. So I gave it 3 stars, was my new rating, unfortunately. The next book I read, The Maidens by Mr. Alex. I don't know how to say his last name, Michaelides? Don't know. This is him. This book, he wrote The Silent Patient. Silent Patient was one of my favorite like thriller books that I've read before. And so I was so excited to read this book because it's about Greek mythology. I love Greek mythology. Percy Jackson is one of my favorite series of all time. I love it. And I know Percy Jackson's not real Greek mythology, but it's good, okay? It gets you in the door, gets your foot in the door. This woman's niece goes to Cambridge University, and then she gets involved with this professor guy, but not like involved. Like she gets put in this little group of girls that he's their professor, and it's just a bunch of little group of girls. She's convinced, because like one of the girls in the groups goes missing, and it's like a friend of her niece's. This woman, I think she's a psychologist. The aunt is a psychologist, and so her niece asked her to come help her figure out what happened to her friend. And then we figure out that bro's involved. This creepy teacher is involved. And we end up figuring out there's like culty stuff going on. I gave this book 5 stars when I read it, and I still think it's a 5-star book. I loved it. I love the Greek mythology aspect. I love the thriller aspect. I loved how certain lines were just so fancifully written and just like beautiful. It was beautiful to read it. I would recommend this book 5 stars. Lord, I'm tired of talking. I need a break. Hold on. We're going to come back in a little bit. Guys, look what I have. Like I said, my mommy got me a Kindle. So I'm not going to have a social life anymore. So I just got my case. And I'll show you. I'll put it on for you guys. We're taking a quick intermission. Okay, so look at these little straps, okay? Right? So I don't have a case on my Kindle right now, but that's okay. So instead of having to like hold it like this, you know what I'm saying? You get these little straps, and you can see how it's kind of like there's like that hook thing right there. So you take it like this, and you hook one on this side like that, and then you bring it around to this bottom one, and you push it onto the bottom like that, and then you can... Oh my god, I love it. Ah! Okay, let me put the other one on, because there's 2 of them that you can like cross. I feel like I put this on wrong. Okay, that looks a lot better. I was just doing it wrong. Oh my god, look at her. See, now I'm good. I'm set. I like this. Ah, I'm so excited. This is the best thing ever. So, yeah, this is what I'll be doing for the foreseeable future. Okay, back to the video. Where's my coffee? Let me tell you something. I'm also doing the tandem read of Throne of Glass right now. Taking a break. It's cold. I'm like 9 chapters into Empire of Storms and 2 chapters into Tower of Dawn. But we're doing this, and I'm going to do this. I'll have every time because I literally have to go work for 6 days in a row after this, and then I have to go back to school. Let me actually get back to what I was talking about. Next book that I read. This is another big one. So From Blood and Ash is the first one. It's the From Blood and Ash series. I've talked about this series before, and I kind of have a love-hate relationship with the series, like I've talked about. These are info dumping books. It's a fantasy series about this girl whose name is Poppy. She is this maiden, so she's kind of being raised to be sacrificed to the gods or whatever for like prosperity reasons or whatever. But then she figures out that she's being lied to a bunch, and she has to figure all that out, and it just follows her meeting this dude who's like her officer guy, but he's not who he seems to be. And there's this whole other like group of people. This is the second book. It's called Kingdom of Flesh and Fire. And then right after I read this one, I read The Crown of Gilded Bones, which is another big one. It's the third one. Same plot, follows her. She figures out her parentage, who she really is, what she really is, and that she's being lied to. These books are good. They also are very spicy. Not like, that's not the whole plot, but God, these people be boinking it, let me tell you. Because they're also magical, so like the boinking it is so much more excessive than it needs to be. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah, I read these too. I gave this one 4 stars, also 4 stars, because these are 4 stars. This series, I think, is a 4-star series for me, but just because they're so, like, in-depth, and, like, the author is cooking, for real, but, like, some of it's dragged out. Next book. I read The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Really out of the blue. I want to watch the movie still. Haven't done that. I gave this book 3 stars. I was reading this book when I was in Florida, and I was, like, walking around and stuff. The atmosphere added to the book. Made it better. But it's, like, this guy is a detective, and then he has this, like, emo girl with a dragon tattoo that, like, is, like, she's so mysterious, but, like, she's so smart. It's her, his, like, sidekick, like, unwilling sidekick. The main guy, his company, he's being blackmailed, so his company's trying to get shut down, but he has to leave so that the company can save itself. But he gets taken to this island where this one girl died. She was, like, murdered, like, 60 years ago or whatever. Grandpa still hung up on it, hires him because he's, like, a detective, and he has to figure out what happened to her. It was a good story. I just feel like my attention span could not handle this book. But it was entertaining. If you want to listen to it, I would highly recommend you listening to it. But everyone's name is in Polish, bro, because I don't know who's who. It was good. I'm glad I read this book because I've always wanted to read this book because it's so, like, popular. And the cover's so cool. Like, I love it. Also, this is the author. That's what he looks like. Little goofball. Next book I read was The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. We have another Frida McFadden book, ladies and gentlemen. This is a 3-book series. I read this one on the beach again. I gave it 4 stars. It was a very good thriller. I love the ending. The ending was so good. This woman goes and works for this guy. She's the housemaid. And then she figures out stuff that's going on behind the scenes that he's doing with his wife and who he actually is. And she has to figure all that out and save the day. So, 4 stars. Speed round. Next book, where is it at? Okay, y'all. This book is in my top 3 also of the year. It's 28 Summers by Ellen Hildebrand. This copy of this book is busted up, and I have the dust jacket. I just don't know where it is. Like, look, ew. It's got stains on it. I think I got this in, like, a book sale. Yeah, I don't know who that is. Miss Irina Shea. This book tore me up. Actually tore me up. I gave this book 5 stars. It follows this girl. Her name's Mallory. Shout out Mallory Moore. Miss you, love you, girlfriend. We gotta hang out soon. Her name's Mallory. It follows her living on Nantucket and this other dude that, what is his name? His name's Jake. Jake and Mallory, they just have this undeniable bond, right? But stuff happens that has kept them apart for 28 summers. They never get together. They just, every single Labor Day, he comes back and visits her. Jake comes back to Nantucket and visits Mallory. This book, the ending was so good. I was laying on the beach reading this book, sobbing, openly sobbing at the end of this book. And, like, I cry at the end of books, but most of the time it's, like, fantasy, like, hard-hitting books. Not hard-hitting. Girl, please. Fantasy books, like, stakes high, someone's died, right? This book had me sobbing, and it's a romance book. The Miss Ellen Hildebrand, I love Miss Ellen Hildebrand, and I will recommend this book to the day I die. Please read this book. 28 Summers. I don't care if you don't like romance. I don't care. Read that book. Next book I read Done and Dusted by Lila Sage. Cover's cool. I like the cover. It's cowboy romance. There's not much substance to it. They don't like each other, but then they start boinking it. Why did I give it 4 stars? Girl, no. This is a 3-star book. There's not a lot of substance in it, but he helps her through some stuff. She helps him through some stuff. They become better people at the very end. If you like cowboy romances, read this one. If you like romances with, like, easy plot lines, read this one. Next book I read, Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney. If you don't know who Sally Rooney is, she's the author that doesn't like to use quotations. Quotations when someone is speaking. So you have to, like, read it really hard to figure out who's saying what and who's saying what where. This one is about these 2 college friends. So one is a poetry writer, and then the other friend performs the poetry. So they kind of have this, like, one's jealous of the other. dynamic friendship because one is colorful and light and exciting. So they're just like jealous of each other. This jealous friendship that they have. I gave this book 3 stars because it was really depressing, like super depressing. And like I get it, like one friend is more jealous of the other friend, and it's like them getting into their careers in life, and then one has the career the other one always wanted. But like at the same time, I'm like, girl, get a grip. Do you know what I'm saying? 3 stars. I'm giving this book 3 stars. If you like conversations with friends, you like normal people, that's another book that she's written. Like that weird, like quirky friendship thing, I'd recommend it. The next one I read is Daisy Hates, which is the second Magnolia Parks book in that series. Daisy Hates is the daughter of a crime boss. Her brother Julian Hates has taken over the crime boss family because their parents died tragically. This is their story about how she's intertwined with Magnolia because they're both from the UK, except they're like more the underbelly, like seedy side of the UK. I personally like the Daisy Hates series more than the Magnolia Park series, just because I feel like Magnolia and BJ are just stupid and like don't have any real reason not to be together except they're sad and jealous. But Julian and Daisy are both very interesting characters, and it's like they have to choose between their family or their like what's right. I recommend this book. Also, cover eats. Every single time the cover eats. Next book I read. This is the 3rd book in the Magnolia Park series. This is Magnolia Park's A Long Way Home. Magnolia ends up going to the U.S. because something happened, and then she comes back, and so she's trying to like make herself better, but then she starts getting involved with other people that are not BJ, but like seriously involved, and so there's so much more drama. I gave this one 5 stars. This one made me cry. This one also made me cry. This is the next book I read. This is the 4th one in the Magnolia Park series. This is Daisy Hates and the Great Undoing. So this is one version of the story. This is from Magnolia's point of view. This is from Daisy's point of view. They go together. It's like the same things happening at the same time. Both of these books are so good. They are so tea. I'd recommend both of them. Cried, sobbed my eyes out at the end of both of these books. 5 stars. Next book I read was The Whisper Man by Alex North. This guy, Tom Kennedy, his wife ends up passing away. Him and his son move to this small town for a fresh start. Things go awry. The house that they move into is low-key kind of haunted. The son gets snatched. Or there was a boy that got snatched 100 years before or something, and then stuff starts happening around the town, and another boy gets snatched, and then his son ends up getting snatched, and then they have to figure out and find him and figure out what's going on. This book was creepy. I didn't love the child kidnapping aspect of it, but I gave it 3 stars. Then I read Funny Story by Emily Henry. This is her new release this year. I gave this one 4 stars. It's basically about Daphne is engaged to marry this guy. They end up breaking off the engagement. Miles was dating this other chick, Petra. They break it up, and the people that these guys were dating end up getting together. Then they have to move in together because they don't have anywhere to live. And it's them trying to work through their breakup. It's like a kind of a strangers to friends to lovers kind of like comfort read. They have to they're trying to figure out how they're trying to deal with their lives now that everything has changed and that these people have left for them. And I've actually really enjoyed this, and I thought it was really funny. So I gave this book 4 stars. I'd recommend it. Then I read The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls. This is about it's like a memoir of this woman. Jeanette Walls, her parents didn't believe in the government, or her dad was fearful of the government, so they never had an actual house. They would move around a lot. He just believed that the government was stalking them. They didn't have birth certificates. It was it's a crazy story, but it's a true story. And it's just how she ended up fighting for an education of being able to go to school and learn how to write and being able to tell this story, and having to figure out how she can still connect with her parents when she gets out of that haze of being okay, the way they live is not right and not correct and not good for me or my siblings, and how they got away from that and kind of built their own lives and established who they were. So I would recommend this book. I didn't rate this just because it's a memoir. I don't feel the need to rate someone's life and how they choose to write about their life, but I would recommend this memoir. And then I read The Couple Next Door by Sherry Lapina. I think that's how you say it. This couple, they're having marital issues already. They have a baby that they just had. They end up going next door for a night off from having to take care of the baby, but the baby's right next door. They have the baby monitor, but they go next door to hang out with this couple, and next thing that they know, they come back, the baby's missing. They have to figure out what happened to the baby. Again, don't know why I read so many child kidnapping books. I don't like that trope. So I gave this book 2 stars because it pissed me off. The ending pissed me off, and I just didn't enjoy it. So 2 stars. Probably my least favorite book of the year, Twisted Love by Anna Huang. I don't even know what the plot is. I think it's this girl's brother's best friend is crazy. This man is crazy, and he's like a CEO. He's super dangerous and broody or whatever, and she needs rescuing. But he has a really tragic past or whatever, and then this girl, Ava, is the only one that can save him from his tragic past. This book had no plot, and they were just screwing the entire time. 2 stars. Next book I read was Allegedly by Tiffany D. Jackson. This story is about a young girl who ended up taking the blame for killing this young white child. She's a little black girl, kills this little white baby because her and her mom were babysitting that night. So she gets put into the system. She gets put into this, like, it's called baby jail is what she calls it. She has this criminal record, and they're trying to, and because she was like 8 years old when this happened or whatever, she gets taken away from her mom. Her mom can visit and stuff, but not really. So she has to, like, grow up in the system, and then she gets, like, this boyfriend, and then she, actually, I'm gonna cut that part out. It's her story of how she's been living in this system and having to deal with all of the crap that goes on in the system, and how she tries to fight the case and get them to hear her out and get like a plea. Gave this book 5 stars. It was so good, and the ending was so good. I would highly recommend this book. The next book I read was The Southerner Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. I gave this book 3 stars just because I remember reading it and I was like really enjoying it at first because it's just these sweet old ladies, and like there's this vampire that moves into the neighborhood, and then they have to like figure out if he's really a vampire or if he's just some really weird guy and like what his deal is or whatever. And then the end just got really gory and I just didn't like it, but it was fun, sort of, I guess. So I gave this like 3 stars. And the next book I read was The Assassin's Blade, because I started my reread of Throne of Glass, so I reread this one. I tabbed it up. I have not tabbed the other ones up. I've talked about the series so many times. I'm not going to get into it. It's about an assassin, who she really is, what actually happened to her family, how she gets involved with the king and has to be in this trial, and then what becomes of her after the trial. I read the first one. The prequel. That's the prequel. So, and then I read Reckless by Lauren Roberts, which is the second book in the Powerless series. Powerless, remember we talked about that earlier. This is the second one. This one is more of a filler book. It's just kind of following our 2 main characters and like showing them like fighting for their love because stuff happens and they can't be together, but they want to be together so bad. I gave this 4 stars because even though it was kind of a filler book and there wasn't a whole lot happening, I really thoroughly enjoyed it still. They're coming out with a 3rd one this year, like I said, and I'm so excited to read it. So I gave this one 4 stars. So then I read A Shadow in the Ember, which is intertwined with the Blood and Ash series. So those big books that I had holding up earlier is intertwined with that one. And it's kind of like a prequel of what is happening now. Like all of the gods that are involved with the story, like where they came from. And like this maiden thing's been happening for so many years. And this is like about the first maiden. So I read the first one. I gave it 4 stars because the characters in that were so much better than the other ones, because I feel like the characters in the From Blood and Ash, like I liked them at first, but then they just started to fall flat for me, and I don't know if that's just a me thing. I was kind of tired of their storyline. It was annoying, but I gave this series, I gave it 4 stars, the first book.